Right, you're very welcome back. Let's talk Gaelic football. I'm delighted to say we've got Mickey Quinn of Longford and Kieran Donaghy on the show this morning to talk to us about what happened at the weekend in terms of the advanced mark and also Tier 2. We might start with the advanced mark first. Kieran, are you a fan of this?
I am. I'm a fan of it because anything that promotes kicking the ball in quicker and earlier and more 50-50 battles in around the scoring zone, I think is a positive for me. You know, there is the slight negative of, you know, are a lot of our young players who become very good at the mark at underage level, are they going to be picked up and poached by Australia? But I think the best young players are being taken, you know, over there anyway. So I think to promote kind of accurate kicking inside, early ball inside, this is a good way. And you know, it'll force every fella to go away and work on taking frees, because I found that out in Australia with the Aussie rules when I was winning ball inside. Taking a free kick when you're not used to it takes a bit of getting used to, and they'll have to go working that skill set.
Are you tempted to make a comeback now, you know?
No. Look, for Kerry's point of view, and you know, a player like Tommy Walsh, who proved, you know, very hard to mark in the league, with the mark, it proves that, you know, from what he learned out in Australia with leading out in front of his man and the timing of that and the execution of it, he could prove very useful for Kerry next summer with this rule in.
This is different though from the league here, isn't it? It's 45 metres in, and as long as it's a 20 metre kick, like it's like I thought the one in the league was very effective as well. I thought it really added to the game, but 45 metres out from goal seems a bit much, does it?
You have to win it inside the 45, yeah?
Yeah, you've got to win it inside the 45, but in the league you had to win it inside the 20 metre line.
I don't think so.
No?
No, I don't think so. I thought fellas could win it outside the 20.
That's my bad. That's my bad. Sorry. I just have visions of balls being kicked in and you had to be in and around the scoring zone, and inside the 45. No, apologies, Kieran.
You're okay. No, inside the 45, yeah, because you know some teams are very good at it in the league. You know, and fellas are going to have to work on their kicking and their accuracy, and kicking it to a guy on the full is going to become important now. And you know, you can still bounce it in. If you bounce the ball into an inside guy, you know he's going to take his man on, and it's going to be like normal. But
yeah,
if you can execute that ball in, you know, you're going to get that opportunity to put the ball over the bar, and you know it should promote more scoring. And there's no harm if a high ball goes in, and if a guy catches it and his body positions in the right manner, he'll be able to turn and take on his men for a goal like normal. I don't think everybody's just going to catch a ball and stop. But what it does allow for is that 50-50 contest where, you know, the excitement of that ball going in, and someone going up fetching it, and they don't have to worry about landing and getting bundled up by 3 or 4 players and getting these annoying turnovers that we see in the game constantly, where an inside forward wins a great ball and he's battled up by 3 or 4 guys and he's trying to get out of it and the ref calls him for overcarrying. So that's, you know, I think that excitement of that big ball in, you know, is something to look forward to with it.
Yeah. Mickey, you obviously have experience of playing Aussie rules and also playing in the league last year. So what's your take on how this rule is going to impact the future of the game, knowing as you do how the game was played in Australia?
Yeah, I suppose probably for ourselves, the first 2 or 3 games that we played was the Burn Cup, and there wasn't one mark taken in those games. And I think the thing with it, it's going to be seasonal. You know, at the start of the league in poor conditions, you're not going to see too many of those marks taken. But you're only going to really see what Kieran's talking about when you get to the good stage on a good pitch, playing on a summer's day, where you can actually go after those marks and manage your game for those kind of marks. The worrying thing probably would be game situation-wise. 4 points down, 5 minutes to go, it might promote teams to drop back and flood the defence. And then, you know, I think 15 seconds once a mark is taken inside, is that too long? That was one of the issues that was raised, which will kind of slow the game down a good bit. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time. There might be a little bit of tweaking to be done with it, but I do think it could be a positive thing to promote guys launching at the ball and going for those marks. And I suppose from a referee's point of view, that they allow for that, that there will be collisions in the air, there will be walls breaking, and it will be slightly messy, but you kind of have to roll with that if that's the approach you're going with.
Yeah, okay. Tommy Rooney was talking to an inter-county forward last night, just kind of ringing around to see exactly what people thought about this. And he said, this is somebody who'd actually taken 3 or 4 marks during the league this year, that had actually slowed the game down instead of speeding it up. His instinct was to play a fast game, but ultimately the mark adds to the slow play and kills the tempo of the game a little bit, Mickey.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing with a hand up to signify that you're going to take the mark, it's not natural for Gaelic football, and that's going to take a bit of time. You know, if a guy comes out, wins the ball on the full at pace, and he's turned and he thinks there's an opportunity, well, the defender isn't going to step off him and say, right, off you go, you can play on, or he's taking his mark. And then our referee is going to penalise the defender for stopping him and bring the ball in another 10, 15 metres as a result of stopping him or impeding him from playing on or taking the mark. So there's kind of a few little grey areas that it's just going to take a little bit of time to get right.
Yeah, it's going to be very demanding for the referees as well, Kieran, in particular, exactly the distance, the 20 metres, so the ball has travelled in the air, and then, as Mickey rightly points out, was it intentional? Did you come down together at the same time? Did you try and play on? Were you trying to take your mark but actually pretending to play on? There's a lot of areas where the referees are going to have to go, okay, I need to understand exactly how this works in practice.
Yeah, there is, of course, and it will take a bit of getting used to. But, like, you know, Mickey's point there about teams being 4 or 5 points up and they getting everybody behind the ball to stop the mark. Teams doing that anyway. You know, when teams go 4 or 5 points up now, it's very much teams are excellent at killing off the game. And I think whereas, you know, they get bodies back. So when you do win a ball late on in the game, as Mickey said there, 4 points down with 5 minutes to go, if you win a ball in around the scoring zone in them stages, you're bottled up by all these defenders back. Whereas now, if you can figure out a way to win a ball, you know, you get to win that mark. And 15 seconds, is that too long? I don't know, Mickey, you know from Aussie rules, but they get nearly 30 seconds in Aussie rules, if not longer, to take a kick. So I wouldn't be overly worried about the speed of the game being impacted. I think what players will get used to is when they're going for the ball, for them to know in the process of going for the leap, you know, what's on here? Is there a goal on? Am I one-on-one? Is there bodies around me? And they play it accordingly to that. So if there's loads of bodies around and there's a big ball coming in towards me, I know all I have to do is get my 2 hands in it and land on the ground with the ball in my hand, and I'm going to have a point. So I think it does promote that. The referees, they're going to have to take a bit of getting used to. You know, you see with that 13-metre rule on the kick all the time, you know, the short free kick, you see that always fellas kick it 7 or 8 metres and it's play away. Refs never call it, they're never sticky with it, whereas they will have to be with this 20 metres for the mark because it's going to result in scores. So that's, look, I think I think it'll improve the game. I'd be much more concerned about the sin bin than I would the mark.
Like, I do wonder as well if there's kind of an unintended consequence here. Maybe it is very much an intended consequence. Is like when it comes to the flow of the game, seeing good kind of in front of your man defending perhaps might be more of an option. Would there be more of an ability to take a risk? Because now, after all, the greatest risk of all is actually allowing your man to catch the ball, and actually getting out in front of him and breaking that ball is less of a risky move as a defender, and perhaps that'll add to the attraction of the game.
Yeah, I think so, and I think defenders are pretty good at, you know, knowing what stage of the game it is, how much pulling and dragging they can get away late on in the game, you know, spoiling that ball late on in the game. So that's the big ball in around the house, and it's not going to be that. You know, I think we have to be very aware of it. It's not going to be this big ball in around the house, in around the square all the time. It's going to be guys being smart enough to figure out how can I get it from 30 metres away from the ball, make a good run and get it into my chest. And then I have a free kick from maybe 30 yards, maybe 35 yards. But if guys work on those kicks and get used to that situation,
yeah,
you know, if you're 5 points down now with 8 or 9 minutes to go, I think it's going to make it easier. And I think you're going to have more option to get back into a game. If you win 3 of those 20-yard passes out in front, you bang them over the bar with 15 seconds, and you're not surrounded by a load of bodies, now all of a sudden a 5-point lead could become a 2-point lead, and maybe then you're able to go for that last big ball in around the house to see if you can get something.
Yeah, Mickey, again, just in terms of the experience about what it's actually like to play against and to defend somebody who's capable of taking marks, to Owen's point, are we going to see defenders playing a lot more in front of their man? Are we going to see more forwards making those runs out in certain specific corridors that are close enough to a shooting zone that they're going to be able to win a fairly routine catch under less pressure than it would be if it was a diagonal ball lorried in on top of the big man on the full forward line?
Yeah, I do think it's going to change a lot of the general play across the board. There's how you defend, how you attack, and what way you're going to go about things like this. As a defender, if you're in a position that you need to, cut out, start playing in front and not allow for that mark, it's going to keep the defenders on their toes, and that's going to be difficult. If there's a forward leading out on the full looking for that ball and you're marking a big man, you might have to play in front, but it's going to be a change up. It's defending that hasn't really been part of the Gaelic football game from a full forward side of things. I suppose Kieran probably would be an exception to the rule from that side of things. But probably the other thing with the slowing the game down with the mark, it's the kick out, the follow-on kick outs. You see it now at the moment, like the Dublin or Mayo, that if it's a scoreable 3 or 45, it's a perfect opportunity to set up a zonal defence, and that was one of the big things in the AFL. If a team got a scoreable a mark inside the 50, you set up an 80-man zone and squeeze, and the only result from that was a long kick out down the line along the boundary and knock it out of play, and it was a result of another restart. So you have 2 or 3 restarts after one another, and it becomes a very stop-start game. Whereas if you look at what's great about the game at the moment is quick kick-outs, moving the ball quickly, and it's end-to-end stuff. And that could change the dynamic of the game massively.
Are you in favour of it?
I think I'm keen to try to see how it goes. I do think it needs a bit of time. I think there's a lot of positive, and it's a skill that's not really worked on. It's kind of, midfielders out around the middle, but from the kick passing point of view, putting in those outside of the boot passes or floaters that are hanging up for guys to launch at it, it's massive from that side of things, and then the catch itself. So I think it's worth a try and see how it goes.
Yeah, it seemed, Kieran, like Dublin didn't engage with this in the league at all last year, that they knew that the championship was going to be refereed under the old rules, and it was such a big historic championship for them that they were going to stick with it. It'll be interesting to see how they adapt to this and whether or not their current playing pool is exactly the right playing pool you need for a completely different style of play.
Well, on top of that, it seemed in the summer they almost changed to more. The way they played in the summer was almost more advantageous with a mark than without it, which kind of seems unusual, like going Route 1 towards Con O'Callaghan a bit more. I don't know what you think here.
For players like Con O'Callaghan, who's unbelievable at winning any type of ball, it's going to be lovely for him. It'll make his man not be able to mark him, from in front as much because he has that threat over the head. A guy like Dean Rock, it's absolutely perfect for Dean Rock. It's going to be, can we get the 20-yard passes to Dean Rock on the money anywhere inside the 45? He's going to plank that over the bar every time. So, of course, there's going to, teams should be talking to people like Mickey and, guys that have come back from Australia or get onto guys out in Australia to say, okay, guys, how do we maximise our potential on this? And Mickey made a good point about, the press on the kick out, from guys taking these scoreable frees when they got 15 seconds to take the free. You get to push everybody up the pitch. We saw Kerry do it this year. We saw Dublin do it. Mayo have done it in the past. Again, I hate the short kick out to the cornerback. I think it slows up the game. I think it turns it into a laborious game. They have to carry it all the way up the pitch. It allows the opposition to get loads of bodies back. At least this, if more teams do go into the press, there's more 50-50 ball going out the middle. Teams are going to have to get better at fielding ball out there. It'll bring the fielder back. We saw a lot of teams until the likes of Fenton and Dave Moran, a lot of teams weren't playing that big man in the middle of the pitch. It was all runners and guys that were athletic. that could get up and down the pitch, but didn't really have to contest much ball. So I think, if there's a press on, there's a lot of kick-outs going out, teams are going to be able to try and win that ball out there. You win it out there against the press, you catch that clean against the press with the mark, you can turn and get your ball into your forwards early, and we'll see a bit more excitement in the game that way too.
Yeah, okay, let's move on. I want to talk about Tier 2. Mickey, what's your take on how we've ended up where we've ended up, where Division 3 and 4 teams who don't make the provincial final are going to be playing in a Tier 2 competition as opposed to for Sam Maguire?
Yeah, I suppose when this was talked about nearly 2 or 3 years, it was one of those things that was mentioned, and Champions League style was talked about, and different formats, and it was exciting, and it was something that I was massively in favour of, that I think, Longford could thrive off something like this and make massive improvements, and everyone wants to play more games, and you see different sides of the coin now, but 63% of squads that were surveyed were against the second tier championship that's after been brought in. It was 4v4 in Division 1, 3v5 against, 2v6 in Division 3 and 3v5 in Division 4 against as well. So, it's players in Division 3 and 4 are affected the most, but at the end of the day, players want to play the most games, and from our route, we'd be hoping that to avoid that, in the sense that we can get promoted out of Division 3 this year. That's one option. Our other option is, we get to a Leinster final, which that brings into play the whole provincial championships, how unbalanced it is at the moment, and how you're relying on that. So if, for the likes of ourselves, we could end up playing 2 games in the championship, or we could end up playing 3 or 4 in a Leinster and then into a second tier competition, and you could be lucky enough to get 4 there. So I think it's something that the likes of Longford and counties in around that standards, it's definitely a good thing for us. But what opened my eyes was it might not necessarily be for a Division 4 team or lower Division 3, Division 4 team, that their wants or needs aren't the exact same as ourselves, and that's where the difficulty comes, that it's not a one-size-fits-all, and it feels like it was rushed through.
Yeah, it does feel like it was rushed through, absolutely. Kieran, what's your take on this?
Firstly, look, as you well know, and we talked about it earlier on the year, I am of course in favour of a Tier 2 championship, but I'm not really, I think this has been a rush job without enough information on how the media are going to cover this. How much airtime these Tier 2 teams are going to get. And I think if the players really, if they're not happy with it, they got to go and take some action and do something about it, because this needs the championship needs an overhaul. We said it earlier on in our review of the championship that the provincial championships in bad winter weather, where people you don't subject them to travelling long distances. You get the provincial championships on in February and March. You make them round robin. You give everybody 4 or 5 games. You hand out the trophy at the end of March. Whoever wins their provincial championships, it's great. And then you go on your league basis of who's in Division 3 and Division 4 right now, who's in Division 1, Division 2. You split them into pots, and you let them try and play like a Premiership and like a Championship over in England, where the Championship gets lots of airtime. There's some great games. They show live games. We all sit down and watch them. And obviously you've got your whoever gets into the semi-finals and finals of that Tier 2 gets promoted next year into the Sam Maguire. Whoever doesn't perform in Tier 1 that year, the bottom 2 teams in each group get relegated. And the excitement that brings, the promotion, the relegation, the desperation, the fans, upset in the stand. They're upset in the stand when they get relegated from the Premiership, but come 3 months' time, they're all rubbing their hands together saying, okay, let's win the championship now and let's get promoted back into the Premiership. So, if teams aren't happy, they're going to have to take action, force the GAA's hand into actually looking at this and doing it properly maybe next year, get proper details on what way the media are going to cover this. That's the critical thing here is this 3 minutes in the Sunday game of these Tier 2 games going to be enough? How many live games are on? and I think John Horan has been right in what he's trying to do, and he knows that it needs to happen. But I think I think it's been pushed through to happen more so than to really concentrate and really get it right on how they go about kind of overhauling the whole championship as a whole, allowing time for your Sigerson Cup in December and January, playing your provincial championships, finishing your Club All-Ireland before New Year's, all them type of things where there's clear windows of what's going on and what people can show.
Like, Kieran, if anybody wanted to take out the most meaningless part of the current football championship, the way it is, they'd probably take out the provincial championships. Like, I think to most people, from a neutral standpoint, they are the most pointless part of the calendar. They make no sense, particularly in Leinster. It's an absolutely pointless championship. The Munster Championship, to a point, is a pointless championship as well. Like, in the sense of a championship, as in the winner is as close to predetermined these days as it possibly can be. That is the point of a championship, determining who should win it. But because of this structure, the provincial championships are more powerful. Like, I often wonder if, like, this Tier 2 championship is just put up as this kind of main topic, but actually secretly behind it, this is one last-ditch effort to save the provincial championships. Making your final now, it becomes more important, even though you might get drawn against Dublin in the first round. Like, I mean, that's completely unfair, like, on those counties, just because they're thrown in against Dublin. Whereas if you're a Limerick footballer, you might draw Waterford and Clare, and you might get two small shocks, and then suddenly you're a Tier 1 county. It's based on geography, and it's complete nonsense that this is actually the case.
It is, yeah. I agree, and but I don't agree with you in principle about the provincial championships. I think if they were played in February and March, and Kerry had to go up to Ennis on a wet night in February with a big breeze, all of a sudden Clare get the crowd behind them. They could pull off a result there. But if it's a round robin stage, it just means every team is getting that 3 or 4 games in their provincial championships. They get used to playing each other. They get used to figuring each other out. Maybe teams get a better chance to improve year on year by guaranteeing them games. But my issue with this Tier 2 is you're still going to have teams that are going to lose, a championship game in the summer. They're going to go into the Tier 2, they're going to lose, and they still end up with 2 games. And that, to me, is we're doing the teams an awful disservice down there. My big thing with the proposal we talked about on Shot Clock this year was the fact that a Division 4 team would get the chance to play 7 games during the summer months. They'd get the chance to really find out about themselves. They'd find a way to learn more about how they improve as a team, what they got to do better next year. How can you know what you got to do better next year when you lose 2 championship games and you're out? It's impossible for these teams to improve. They have no hope of winning the All-Ireland, but they do have a hope if they get things right and they work hard and they're organised and they use the rules to the best of their ability. They do have a chance to win or get into at least a semi-final of a Tier 2 championship, where it's big games. The final is played before the All-Ireland final. As I said before, we don't need minors. We don't need 16 and 17-year-olds playing on All-Ireland final day. It's too much pressure now with social media. If some fella misses a kick or a free, he's getting stick in school the following day. They just don't need to be under that type of pressure. And I think it'd be much more of an atmosphere if you 2 Tier 2 teams in an All-Ireland final. Of course, that'll go back to the brasses, all these people that sit at Congress and they go, oh, well, we won't be able to get all our tickets. We'll have to give more tickets out to the Tier 2 teams, and that probably doesn't suit. But again, it's old way of thinking. We got to figure out a way of to promote every team and to allow teams to really, during the summer months, for their fans of each county to get a bit of momentum up and travel and get around and see different places and try and get a bit of momentum that way. This, as I said, John Horan is right in principle about wanting a Tier 2, but I think this has been, and so overwhelmingly won in Congress, it'd make you ask, how does this go? What are the phone calls in the lead up to Congress? What type of pressure is applied on county boards, people that are there, delegates to get this over the line? But it needed more thought. It needed to leave this year the way it was and really come in with a full restructure of our GAA games on football side of things. I think the hurling have it pretty well now at the moment. There is massive stock in their Tier 2 and Tier 3 competitions. I know from watching the Kerry lads and seeing how they progressed up the ranks. And you see Laois this year, you know, you wouldn't have called them a tier 1, but now they are because they fought their way into it. So that's what it should be about. You should be rewarded for having a good season.
Yeah. Kieran, we let you go. I know you got to go, but thanks a million for joining us this morning. That's great stuff as usual. Mickey, I did want to ask you one last thing, because the very high-powered committee, the Fixtures Review Committee, was put together to examine exactly how the fixtures should run for the future of Gaelic football, and they're going to report, I think, in the next month or so. Has all their work been wasted, given that we already now have this new competition that didn't exist before they started their review of what the problems were?
I think so. Whether something that their review or their report could have been pushed forward and rushed through to before Congress, that's another matter. But why set up a committee like that to their sole task is to come up with solutions and reports and recommendations on something like this and not pay heed to it. So it just doesn't make sense. Whether there was alternative motives to get something like that rushed through, I don't know, but it seems daft, really.
As a player in your dressing room, is everybody in agreement with you that this is broadly a good step? Like, are those conversations happening on a fairly regular basis? Do they not happen that much? Or what is the kind of level of engagement that you guys have collectively with this? Yeah,
definitely it could be better from a player's point of view. You know, that players probably have sat back in a sense and probably might not have engaged as much as they should have. But you see it coming through that, you know, it's about player buy-in now. The different articles saying that, you know, it's up to the players to make something out of this. But if it was like that, then take on board what the players have been saying. 63% of the squad's not in favour of it. That's fairly black and white, that, you know, this might not be the exact way to go, and take that feedback on board. But I think only time is going to tell now. I was very wary that something like this would come in, and it's going to be harder to reverse it than to try and get a more one-size-fits-all solution than try and rush through something that might not be as successful.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
One of the other things, was the gap in the window. You know, let's say likes of Longford were out in Leinster early. We lose that game, we're going to be sitting a long time waiting before a second-tier championship comes on board, and that's where the difficulty arises, with players not committing then for the, you know, you're back in club mode there for whether it be 6 weeks or whatever, and then to try and get back in the horse and go again later on in let's say August, I think it is. So that's going to cause issues in itself. Yeah,
I can definitely see players deciding that they're not going to get involved. If you're at the lower end of Division 4 or even the lower end of Division 3, you don't really feel if the draw is bad, particularly in one of the Leinster counties where you've got no chance of making a provincial final, you can see players opting out after the league and going, right, well, we didn't get promoted this year to the top 2 divisions, so I'm taking the summer off and I'm going to go to the States and make some cash.
Yeah, and I suppose we were in that position last year with a few guys, and, you know, don't begrudge it, they're dead right. You know, and the league is a competition for ourselves that it's massively important, and it's even more important now with the Sam Maguire and the second-tier competition. We're lucky enough this year with the draw, the Leinster draw, that we are on the opposite side, and it is something that we can see ourselves maybe giving it a right crack, and that might entice players. But, you know, in a year or two's time, when that might change, and you've a tough first-round game, then those things are going to come to fruition.
Right, fair enough. Mickey, thanks a million for joining us this morning. Best of luck with the game against Garrycastle this weekend. I hope you guys make it through. This is really one of the best competitions that the GAA has, particularly at this stage where club champions come out and they start to face each other, and everybody looks at what certain clubs have done at this stage of the competition in recent years and go, yeah, I can believe that we've got a chance here of a bit of glory.
Yeah, definitely. You see last year's, there's always shocks and upsets. You know, that's why people love it, and that's why people love sport, is the underdog story and the underdog winning games, and that's probably what you're hoping to see at an inter-county level, which you don't see as many nowadays. But the club championship is something that there's shocks on the card every week. So fingers crossed.
Well, best of luck to everybody from Emmett O'Clough against Gary Castle this weekend. Mickey Quinn very good with his time this morning, and Kieran Donaghy giving us their thoughts on the advanced mark and also on the Tier 2 Championship.